Hello, today we are going to talk about disclosing education and employment first part. The first part is basically about disclosing education, and the second part, the next time, is about disclosing employment. So let's go into education. On by now lectures, you realized in what kind of society we are living. You have also realized the matrix hypnosis that is slipping down the average person. But now realize that the hypnosis that is imposed upon us by the matrix is merely a tool that can also be used for good purposes. Yes, the mind hypnosis can be at the same time our strength over the matrix. The mind hypnosis can also be good, and this is called education. Certainly not any education, but the one that is intended to liberate the man from the shackles of the matrix. As we already discovered, the child's backup level is the fastest charging since we in childhood learn how to walk, run, eat, talk, dress, ride a bicycle, etc. But in elementary schooling begins a more complex programming for preparing our children to the adult world. And this programming is no longer linked just to the child's physical body and survival, but mainly to the child's attitude towards society. So it's not intended for such simple physical things, but mostly in our relation toward the surroundings. However, this more complex programming is under the baton of the matrix, which is filling our children also with the clutter and so putting them into specific frameworks or boxes. And because our children in elementary school are also the most saturated with information, they are also learning the most because their backup level is pretty empty. There is, let's say, a lot of space to be filled up. In this way, they absorb large amounts of information, which is also often deficient, distorted, or just negatively oriented in this primary school, but also in parental upbringing by our parents. Such information is imposed on them also in preschooling and in extracurricular education. Okay, of course, our parents can do their best, but the families where is at least one of the parents' spiritual awaken are still rare. Here, don't get me wrong, good parents can teach kindness, understanding, comprehension, and so on, but this doesn't mean that their child will be able to unplug from the matrix and see the wider picture of all that is, or God. You can be very kind, but inside very restless, full of worries, stress, fears, and so on. This is not inner peace and bliss, so you are still pretty attached to this matrix. Further, so the programming of our children begins accelerating in elementary schooling, and this with the material that is, to be honest, very slowly changing. Some subjects not only include the information that is also deficient, distorted, or negatively oriented, but also search that is strictly focused on what is scientifically validated and proven. However, did you as a school child even ask yourselves what are actually the right criteria for the certification or the proving of certain information? Well, in all likelihood, you didn't. And this is because children cannot do that. I mean, very young children at the first grades. So our children are the most vulnerable because their sophisticated mind is a very quick learner, as it learns both with the better and with the poorer information. However, more is their backup level saturated with the poorer information, usually the more of the better information their minds needs to unlearn the poorer ones, and to become eventually freed from the matrix. The more you are saturated with negativity, the more of positive information you usually need. But of course, what are actually the right criteria for the certification or proving of certain information with which they are filling our children in schools? Well, these criteria or definitions are just those with which we are taught that are the solely proper. What is scientifically proven, what is visible, audible, tactile, very physical. Well, so we've been brought up, and that's why we hardly notice the material that is out of the five senses in the elementary schooling. So what is the material that is out of the five senses? Usually it's related on personal growth, but mostly on spiritual things that are beyond this dimension. Actually, you can trace almost nothing about the dimensions and densities, about the universal facts that I mentioned in the first lectures, about the afterlife, the higher dimensions, about the human bodies, these human sub-bodies that are mental, emotional body, etheric body, physical body, astral body, and so on. Then about the signpost of the higher self, that includes intuition, inner voices. Then you don't hear nothing about channeling, about dreaming, what is happening. Then about IHSP or ESP, extrasensory perception. Then about synchronicity or co-alignment, practically nothing. About telekinesis or psychokinesis, etc. Because these are very important things. In fact, you can have many these certificates, education, uh, evaluations, and so on, but you can be restless inside for life. In fact, such information that I mentioned can easily disturb the current equilibrium of society. And if it goes for the information in the area of the five senses that could again disrupt the equilibrium, then the information is already said, often again deficient, distorted, or negatively oriented. Let me mention some of these tangible physical topics, subjects that are not included in entire school. First thing, the existence of the matrix and the status quo. These bankers, leadership of the hierarchy, these elites. But then about the conspiracies, about the children with difficulties, about the new children like indigo children, crystal children, rebel children, and so on. Then about the untouchable monetary system. They're teaching like the monetary system is obvious. Then about the growing business. Yes, the business is growing, but we are more and more polluting. Then about the healthy economy. Like with growing business, the same. Yes, the GDP rising, is rising, but the earth is day by day more polluted. Then about the good politics and further. It's they don't explain the wider picture how this is working, what is happening behind the curtain, and further still, the hidden history of the mankind. Is this the real history that they are teaching to us? I mean, from many thousands years ago. Then about the free energy from thin air. Then about the truth about non-terrestrial intelligent beings, aliens. Where is this taught in elementary school? Well, but not everything is as black as it seems. We have in fact the true peaceful warriors against the matrix, and these are the new agers, the new children and youth. I call the new children and youth simply as new agers that may include indigo, rainbow children, crystal, and so on. Yes, and even if they aren't spiritual awakened, these children, yet they have their greatest guidance, their intuition. They are the biggest challenge for the primary education, especially for the teachers. These children are also often asking unexpected questions that are usually not complicated, but are for the common sense very simple. These questions are such that some teachers became even silent since they simply don't know how to answer them, while some teachers have already been programmed in such a way that they immediately discard the sensitive questions, as they have in their unconscious the pattern, the belief, the definition that such questions should be asked to the authority of knowledge. Well, these questions can be, for example, teacher, is this necessary for our education? Very simple. Then, teacher, why is this so and not so? Or, teacher, do you believe in this? Do you believe in this? Or, teacher, how would you act in this case? Or still, teacher, where are you getting this information? Thus, the new agers are a big challenge because they do not accept the method just like that, but they rather ask for the background. The new agers intuitively know that our education is stagnating, so that they become soon impatient and restless. And this is why it also decreases their excitement and inspiration, and so they arise much of these troubles in school. Further, a good illustration that in education isn't all as it should be, it is further in the fact that some scholars and students are learning the substance by heart, word for word. In fact, realize that we learn word for word by heart most often when we are not excited and inspired over the substance. I was such a scholar. I was learning paragraph per paragraph, sentence per sentence, word for word, just as it was written, because I didn't like the substance. However, just as we can saturate, pay attention here, just as we can saturate our backup level with the clutter in the form of repeatable processes, negative repeatable processes, with poor beliefs, definitions, prejudices, principles, habits, patterns, expectations, addiction, attachment, etc. So we can also saturate our backup level with the school substance that is not interest for us. The same. Here realize that like the negative repeatable processes are distancing us from the higher perspective, so it is also the school substance that is not interesting for us, that is not inspiring for us. In the vice versa case, when we are filling up the backup level with good repeatable processes and exciting knowledge for school, then we are not saturating our backup level, even if we accumulate a lot of information, because these are the vibrations that are the most compatible with us, with the higher self, that are the most transparent for us, that are the most allowing the free flow of the creative energy of the source to us. So it's a completely different thing if you like a certain information. You can have tons of information and you like them. This is not a heavy vibration for you. Further, but the issue isn't only in the learning by heart, but also in the fact that scholars or students are using the well-known cheating and copying in various examinations. However, the frequency of cheating isn't so much an issue of education itself, since teachers do not encourage the learning by heart, while they even punish the cheating and copying, rather than in the lack of interest into a subject or simply in a poor career choice when it comes to secondary schooling, these middle schools. Because we all know that when we are interested into a particular subject area, that we then exercise all of our understanding to consider and explore the substance, the subject, to put it into our own framework, to remember it in our own way, not like word for word, all by heart. However, even in the correct choice of profession, today we cannot completely avoid the matter that we are not interested into, and so neither the cheating nor the copying, and nor the learning by heart. The installation of cameras during the examination will be only a poor preventative measure against all of this. But the reasons for the frequency of cheating in the examinations, it isn't only lying in their disinterest toward a certain subject, but also in the demands of some teachers who demand that their scholars and students learn the matter literally by their personal definitions. Not the definitions that are imposed by, let's say, by the leadership of the school, but by personal definitions. Well, what can we do about that in general? The key for determination of cheating, copying, and the learning by heart is a wide range of optional subjects on all educational levels. Well, this is the bright side that has been implemented for quite some time, although at the same time also the range of the mandatory subjects will have to become reduced or simplified. The mandatory subjects are quite many and they will have to become reduced or simplified, especially simplified. As for next, it should be also necessary to change the learning techniques, very important. First, the volume of the written material should be for some subjects lesser, but in contrast we should have more images and in particular the audio-video material. As they say, a picture is worth thousands words, and this is how true. But it also applies that the audio-video material is together worth more than 1,000 pictures, isn't it? In both ways, a video clip is made of 1,000 pictures, and also it contains much more information. There is the vibration of the speaker, for example. It can include much more emotions, and so we more easily memorize in our backup level. Okay. Further, the preschooling and elementary schooling, the preschooling and elementary schooling should put more emphasis on the learning from practical examples of cause and effect. This means that we can demonstrate the children how their choices affecting their lives, a very important thing. This doesn't mean that we demonstrate the danger of skating on a frozen lake by terrorizing them with a dreadful movie. No, but that we, through computer simulations or scale models, demonstrate that the skating on a frozen lake isn't the best choice. So the purpose is not to intimidate them because great fear is worsening our concentrations, but to show them what are better and worse choices. For example, also in traffic, accidents and so on. especially for the most younger ones. Moreover, also the remote learning should become more frequent, especially for secondary schools and universities, where there isn't so much need for learning interpersonal relationships. The remote learning is also a major contribution to ecology and safety, and above all, for increasing our free time. Because if you're not traveling to school, there is less pollution, there is less degradation of roads, there is less possibility for accidents, and there is more free time for us. Further, that our education and schooling is lagging behind is also testifying the fact that we still have a lot of theft, crime, violence, warfare, poverty, pollution, extinction of animal and plant species. Very simple. The, if these things exist, this means that something is very wrong with our education, especially the primary school, elementary schools, and and also our parents. Some may say that the issue is more in our parents. Well, also our parents were going to their elementary school, so it all begins there. Further, also the schools support too little the properties of the right half hemisphere. So they teach too little about our emotions, cooperation, spontaneity, etc., and too much about our reasoning, competition, organization. Usually, in general, the right half of the brain is more inclined to these features: emotions, cooperation, spontaneity, and so on, while the right half is more physical, reasoning, competition, organization, more physical, and so on. And the features of the left half uh, uh, are more, how can I say this, are more prevalent in this society. Okay. The weakness of upbringing and education is also reflected in the fact that we have many people with depression and suicidal tendencies, as well as many emotional mental patients. So there is really something wrong with education that exists such things. Okay, from the high perspective is perfect all as it should be, but this is going to change. This is also reflected in the fact that psychological and physical violence is frequent among many families. Also, divorces are high, and despite the fact that are getting less couples married, especially in some countries. Further, so it's very evident that education is too focused on curative and too little on prevention. In other words, education is consciously focusing on the negative instead of consciously on the positive, on a completely new approach toward life. This is also evident in the large amount of criticism toward children and adolescents. Here it is very important to become aware that toward what we are paying our attention and investing energy from this is also expanding back in a similar form, especially if we have a lot of inner resistance toward children, then this is expanding back to us in some way. Thus, it is necessary to reduce criticism and instead rather focus on the existing positive characteristics of children and adolescents, especially to find them out. So let's support the good qualities of children and adolescents, their potential qualities, while we shouldn't dedicate so much attention to their poorer ones. Because the more you're dedicating attention to the good ones, the less space remains for the poorer ones. The energy goes to that side, to this positive side. Similarly, let's rather tell children what to do rather than what not to do. You know, if you have a child, if you say don't do that, then after a certain time, there is the possibility that she is going to do precisely that, because there is a lot of inner resistance in you and in him. So it's better to be focused on what to do. So, in the upbringing and education are needed significant changes because bear in mind that the human being is changing, including its interest, especially in these secondary schools. Consequently, the elementary period should provide a broader knowledge while the university education should be more specific, shorter, and made of a more practically oriented knowledge. Of course, it depends from country to country. Some have almost a perfect education, other, others not. The university and the secondary education should be also more closely related to the working sector with the employers. Okay, this I'm going to talk in the next lecture about employment. The primary education should provide to children the discovering of who they really are, of what is their place in the universe, and of what is actually exciting for them. Already in elementary schooling, we should actively discover and supporting our children's interests from year to year and not collectively through classes but also through face-to-face conversations, eye to eye. When I attended elementary schooling, there were no traces of such conversations, well, except when things went wrong. When things went wrong, where there was some violence, some stealing, there were face-to-face conversations. Otherwise, practically none, only collectively. And this is not the best. And later, when an elementary scholar chooses his profession or education, he shouldn't be sealed when his interests will change. So the diversion should be fast, simple, and of course free of charge. Bearing in mind, a person who finished a college, got a job, and he discovers after a few years that he has a profession that is no longer exciting. And since the diversions require a lot of time and money, most people immediately give up and insist in their exciting job until their retirement. I was such an example. I put a lot of effort into my diploma and my graduation, and after some years I discovered that it's not inspiring for me. In fact, the times when we are engaged in the same job from completion of schooling up to the retirement are completely over. Pay attention, the human being is generally quite universal, comprehensive, and all capable, and can do uh, various things. Uh, but the key question is, are you inspired, excited by a certain activity, primary activity? Further, the education shouldn't be intended solely for children and youth, but also for adults and elderly. Here, I don't mean only the education as a diversion from the current profession, because much of that is already available, but the discharging of what we've been incorrectly or inadequately taught, especially in elementary schooling. So I'm referring in particular to the knowledge that you may notice still in a minor number of lectures and workshops run by the spiritually awakened and enlightened people around the world. Like the method that I'm teaching, especially the first lectures about personal growth and spirituality. Such workshops and lectures shouldn't be also introduced for parenting, but since the speak, facts speak for themselves. There is still too much psychological and physical violence. Bad parental upbringing, there is a lot of pollution, and so on. For example, what's regard parental education, children, family, the belief that are for the birth of a child necessary only the fertility, finance, and love, it might be outdated. Here it is not just about a happy family, but about a healthy earth. But nevertheless, in spite of the outdated education, a new era is approaching when today's children will become the new teachers. And this will not teach only what they've learned, but especially what they have acquired from the beyond. Channeling. This is channeling. So, a completely different approach toward life. It's just a matter of time. Especially the older generations, the elderly are very, let's say, how do I say, very anchored into these outdated traditions, cliches, stereotypes, patterns, obsolete beliefs and definitions, and it is very difficult to reprogram them. They have much stress, inner resistance, fears, and so on. But still, if there is inspiration for something, you're going to do that. And for the last about educations, well, uh, some interesting facts. Well, let me conclude this lecture with a few words on violent video games. Why are people playing video games while, on the other hand, our school teachers are condemning them? There is a lot of debate on this. Even I was playing much of the video games. I was very addicted, but in school, I was one of the best. Even despite the fact that I was addicted, it depends how you are aligned. It's all about that. So, and it doesn't matter what kind of games you're playing. So pay attention to this paragraph, the last paragraph here. So as first realize that if we go deeper into the details of psychology and even beyond, into the words of souls, the higher selves, then the higher self is having also lives in other embodiments, including those where there is a lot of warfare, violence. Well, but what mean these connections for today's life? To, just that I remind you this, if the palm represents the higher self, the higher self has now at this moment many multiple parallel lives, embodiments, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on lives, and these energies are flowing. So, also, what you have learned in one life is flowing into another life, and it may include also violence. So, but what means this connection for today's life? They mean that the human being is really not born violent. However, the human consciousness will sooner or later become aware of the dark side of the self's experiences. The higher self is not dark, but it may have dark experiences. And especially if a person is born into a violent society like is ours, he will become much sooner aware of the dark side, especially in other lives and here. But if we consider our Earth, where there is no shortage of violence, then we'll become aware of the dark side of our higher self's experiences through the learning of our history, because there is much violence, then through violent parents, then through violent classmates, then through watching of the TV Chronicle, then through playing violent video games, etc. Through all of this, you may arise into awareness that violent energy, but it may not be yet expressed outwardly. So, however, after all the warfare and violence, as well as after all the violent parents and surroundings, it is incorrect to attribute the big part of violence to violent video games, because aren't these taking place in an imaginary environment? The strength lies in the fact that the violence isn't implied in the real life, isn't it? Thus, the violent video games may indeed rise into awareness the self's lives through the violent civilizations across all that is. But remember that the real spiritual strength lies precisely in the fact that we don't use violence in our environment. Therefore, it's not wrong to release the excess of our energy into the virtual worlds of violent video games, because the earth is a very difficult place, so you release a part of violence there rather than here. While on earth we aspire for unconditional love. This is the power. So to conclude, if your child is often playing violent video games, then this is pretty sure that you have at least a mature self in front of you, if not even a master one, that has many experiences across of all that is, and an experienced master self is the one that has experienced as many as possible of experiences, including the dark ones, the violent ones. This is a master self. Well, this is basically all for today. The next time is the second part about unemployment. So have a good day. Bye bye.